it's not a very palatable set of options. And I think that the idea of pursuing a deal now for the White House is that it's a way of getting out of that rather difficult dilemma that they find themselves in.
Donald Trump said that Washington had very good talks with Tehran yesterday after the two sides began indirect negotiations in Oman's capital, Muscat, that could avert a military escalation. Now, the talks are the first to be held between the two countries since Washington launched devastating military strikes on Iran's nuclear sites last June. They're also the first talks since the uprising and a very, very brutal crackdown, which of course saw thousands of people killed and injured. Now, the US has built up a fleet in the Arabian Sea, and after telling Iranian protesters in January that help was on its way. Now, Donald Trump says that another meeting is set for next week, but warned of very steep consequences if Tehran doesn't make a deal. Well, let's now catch up with Rob Macaire. Rob is former British ambassador to Iran. He served in post between 2018 and 2021. Hi, Rob. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
So what do you think these talks are going to achieve? Do you think they will come to some resolution or some kind of deal?
Well, it's been difficult to get there so far, hasn't it? I mean, we've seen these talks happening in different forms for a number of years under the Trump administration, and before that under the Biden administration, trying to get back to some sort of deal. And the underlying deal still has a logic to it, which is the Iran renouncing a lot of its nuclear program and allowing in the inspectors in return for sanctions lift. But as you were saying, Ayesha, the context for this is that Iran has just killed many thousands of its own people in putting down those demonstrations. That makes it politically harder, I think, for America to do any deal that lifts sanctions, which would be seen as giving a lifeline to a regime that is, looks like it's on its last legs.
And I think for a lot of people, many people, particularly probably people in Iran, feel that Donald Trump may have given out mixed signals, because on the one hand, he was very much egging on the protesters and saying that help was on its way. That help didn't come. Now he's looking to cut a deal with the authorities, primarily to stop their nuclear development. How do you think the sort of citizens of Iran will feel about Donald Trump?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I mean, obviously, President Trump uses sort of unpredictability as a deliberate tactic, and he sees that as one of his strengths. But that means that it's a very inconsistent policy, and it's very difficult for people to read it. And as you say, some people who came out on the streets and risked their lives or lost their lives, perhaps as a result of what he said during the protests, I think people will see that as having let them down. And yet now I think he's in a difficult position. I think the US is in a hard position because they've got this force in the region. I don't think that President Trump will want to look weak by backing down and not using it. But the use of military force now, many weeks after the actual peak of the protests, won't necessarily help people inside Iran. And if it's a really severe strike that takes out the senior leadership of Iran, that could lead to very serious chaos, and that could be something that America would not want to create. So it's not a very palatable set of options, and I think that the idea of pursuing a deal now for the White House is that it's a way of getting out of that rather difficult dilemma that they find themselves in.
And what next for the citizens of Iran, Rob, who, as we have both mentioned, took to the streets very bravely, so many people killed and executed and injured. Do you feel that the authorities and the regime has exerted its dominance again over its citizens, or do you think that there could be more flare-ups and more push for change, and could they be successful?
Well, I don't think that it's very easy to generalize about a population of 90 million people. I think people try to simplify the situation inside Iran. It's very complicated, and I think it's very difficult to say whether or not people would come out on the streets in huge numbers again. Maybe they would in the right circumstances, but however much people detest the regime that is suppressing them and has misgoverned Iran for such a long time, I know from my personal experience there that there's also a deep fear of chaos and state collapse in the country. So a replacement of the regime with something better is something everyone wants to see, almost everyone. Um, but a regime collapse with nothing to replace it, and the possible fate of what happened to something like Syria with a civil war, that isn't something that ordinary Iranians want to see.
And look, we've been talking a lot about, or I've just had a very interesting conversation with a Labour MP about feminism and patriarchy, and that's no more, important than in Iran, where so many women's rights have been crushed, and we have seen uprisings in terms of women wanting to have more basic freedom and basic human rights. For the women of Iran, does it not feel that their rights are sort of trampled upon because of, these more important political discussions about nuclear programs and things like that? It does feel, certainly as a feminist here in Britain and speaking to sort of, exiled Iranian women, that everyone says, oh, it's really terrible what's happening to women in Iran, but then nobody really does anything to help these women.
Yeah, I don't think we should underestimate the unbelievable bravery and in fact success of the protesters in 2022 and the Women Life Freedom Movement, because it seemed, I think, unimaginable that the regime would relinquish its principles on the hijab, which is such an important symbolic issue. Although, of course, there are many other issues, as you say, of really oppression of women inside Iran. But that was really seen as totemic for the regime, and they have been forced effectively to back down on it by those protests in 2022.
But Rob, women want more. Women want more than that.
They do, and the agenda moves on, but I think that to it would be a mistake to discount the fact that actually people pressure has, that was one of the few occasions when people pressures have made a difference in Iran. And I think women are now looking to the next stages of the agenda there. And everyone would like to see a more liberal and less oppressive regime inside Iran. And it applies not only to women, it applies to all of the citizens of Iran. But as I say, there are scenarios that are worse than the current status quo.